Okay, and we're live. Shalom, everybody, and welcome to the Renaissance Woman Show. I'm your host, Renaissance Woman, aka Ren Judah. Pardon the glare on my glasses. I just need to work out this tech stuff, and I just haven't got to it. But anyway, we're going to go ahead and finish up this leadership series, or well, I will say continue because we're not going to finish it up. This is going to be an ongoing thing. But we're going to finish talking about how to navigating a toxic work environment. And we started it off with this is our leadership workshop series, and we've already covered how to identify the toxic work environment, working on your checking your status in geography, talking about what you can and cannot control. You see here we're talking about your internal locus of control, your external locus of control. And so for this wrap up part, since we identified the realities of a toxic work environment, we identified the behaviors and what it looks like, and you trying to fit in spaces where you don't belong. So now we're going to talk about how to identify a toxic leader. And I wanted us to dive more down into this because toxic work environments do not happen in a vacuum. They happen because the leadership allows it. Leadership does not step in. And most of the time that is when things start to go bad because they know there are problem employees. They know the behavior, but they're so busy either trying to make themselves look good or they want to be, because believe it or not, you have some leaders that are intimidated by their staff. And so to get along with them, they are fine with allowing the toxicity to go on. And you will find that a lot of times in places where, especially where there's civil service jobs, but most of the time it's the opposite. It's the bosses that are engaged in a bad behavior because these people, for the most part, tend to understand that they are the ones that ultimately hold the true power. But if you have a boss who's a people pleaser, that shows up a lot different. A lot of times I see people focusing on, Zell, I'm sorry, I didn't even introduce you. You guys, my co-host, Zell. I'm just running my
Hey,
mouth,
everybody.
with my co-host on the Hebrew Woman Show as well. But we've been doing a leadership series over there as well. And Zell, I see a lot of videos talking about narcissistic bosses and bad bosses, and I think all that's true too. But I think the people-pleasing boss often gets away with a lot of stuff too. They don't get called out as much as the narcissistic or tyrant, the megalomaniac. They get a pass that they shouldn't be allowed to have either because they allow the toxicity to go on as well.
I'm actually really curious to hear about this because it makes me stop and think, are there any of these things that I may be doing unaware? Where can I improve? Or, what behaviors are out there that I might be contributing to? And I definitely want to correct that where I can.
And me too, that's the whole thing. And just like we discussed on the Hebrew Woman channel, that's the whole purpose of this is not to point fingers at them. This is so that we can examine ourselves and know what we're doing and where we're going. And also we can check ourselves and see if we're behaving in these ways, because we all have some of these traits. You have the micromanager, and let's
Hmm.
just keep it real. The leadership isn't just about being in a workplace, it's at home. Are you a
Yep.
micromanager at home? Are you meddling in every little thing? The people in your house cannot get a break. Your husband cannot catch his breath because you are a control freak. And I think women, we do tend to be very controlling because, and it doesn't show up for the reasons that a lot of people think. A lot of times women and their control is out of fear. Just like, you worried about, are they going to make it home safe? Are they gonna, you always think the worst. Oh, if you let this happen, they're gonna die. It's just you just think the whole thing is gonna fall apart. So look at yourself and ask him, am I a micromanager? And if you have to be honest with yourself so you can make sure that you're not showing up like this. Do you practice favoritism? And sure, we all have
Ooh.
our favorites. We do. There are those people who you just get along with and you like, but is it showing up as unethical behavior? And true, you're not going to treat everybody the same. Let's just keep it real because everybody is not the same. You may have that worker that you have to be stern with because if you play with them, they will play with you. So you just have to find that balancing act. But you also need to recognize when this is happening to you. So it's a double-edged sword. When you see the micromanager, when you see the favoritism, the lack of empathy, the failure to reward and recognize, They never say good job after you busted your ass all day, all week working on a project. And when you get it done, it's just like, okay, thanks for doing your job. They won't even give you that. It's like you're doing your job, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody likes validation. People want to receive validation. And if you have a team, your team wants to know that they're doing a good job and they want to hear it from you as their leader, what they're doing right. But also, as you see on the far end here, it says resistant to feedback. Are you, as a worker or an employer, are you resistant to feedback? You don't want anybody telling you anything. You can't receive correction. You know, so we talk, so you have to look at that too. Every time someone says something to you at work, are you getting the attitude? Shalom, Crystal, what's going on? I'm gonna drop that link down there for you just in case you
Hey,
decide you want
Crystal.
to click it
Welcome,
and come
Crystal.
up. Haven't seen Crystal in a while. Crystal from One Flesh down there. Let me copy this link and drop it right in the chat. That way, if you want to pop on, you can. So yeah, we all have either engaged in some of these behaviors, or we know what it looks like. um, Blame shifting. Whenever things go wrong, are you blaming everybody else, or do you have a boss that's blaming you for everything? And what do you do when that happens? Again, we have talked to you. I've talked to you guys ad nauseum, and I know you're probably tired of me saying this, but you need to get a calendar journal, where one that
Mm-hmm.
allows you to take notes and write in the squares. This happened on this day, and I don't care how minor it is. Anything you identify in that workplace that is not normal or not going as way it should, you need to write it down. And that gets hard. And that's one of the things. This is why also toxic work environments are allowed to fester and go on, because nobody's documenting. And then what happens
Mm-hmm.
is when the behaviors and aggressions start being aimed at you, you're going to want everybody to come and help you. Nobody is going to support you. You have to support yourself, because keep in mind, these people are trying to keep their jobs too. So you need to document anything you see. And believe you me, those journals, those logs, they hold a lot of weight in court. So you need to be documenting everything. Even if it doesn't happen to you, if it's not happening to you. If you see bad behavior that's aimed at another employee and you witness it, write it down, because more than likely a lot of these people, they're going to fall out. Because what do we identify about a toxic work environment back further on in the screen? We talked about, let's see if it's over here. You're going to see a high turnover.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to wonder, why can't they keep people here? This job may even pay well. Like, they pay well. What is the issue? The issue is it's a toxic work environment. So when you see people coming and going, and you know the reason why they left, write it down. You need to write everything down. JB says, I could never work in a toxic work environment. And bless you, sisters, for having this conversation about the subject. Thank you. I think it's important. And I think it's important for us to talk about shared experiences. And this is something, we're always on these channels talking about relationships. You have a relationship with your employer and your coworkers. Now, whether it's positive or negative, you need to weigh all things, because maybe just like you would transition and work your way out of a toxic relationship, you may have to be working on your exit plan for this toxic work environment, even if it does pay well. And you really need to go if it doesn't, you know. So back to the previous slide. So unrealistic expectations. This person will come and stack a pile of folders on your desk at the end of the day and ask you to have if they're doing this at 4 o'clock and want you to have this back to 5. Just nonsense. Just things. Because one thing, this is something that Zell and I were just talking about.
Mm-hmm.
One thing about a toxic work environment and a toxic boss, people who engage in that behavior, they run the gambit with their morality. It's up and down. One day they're talking about ethics and what's ethical and what's right. Then the next time you come around, not only are they engaging in the very behavior that they said was immoral or not ethical, they got a team of people supporting them in it. And if you have values, if you have morals, and you're in the average workspace, you're going to stand out like a sore thumb. If you're a person that believes in honesty and integrity and truth telling, you are going to be in the minority of just about everywhere you go. I'm going to be honest with you. Nobody said, for those of us who are on a faith walk here, this is why it isn't easy. People keep thinking about, like, being nailed to a cross, but sometimes This is a lot of
Mm-hmm.
emotional and spiritual warfare that goes on.
Absolutely.
A lot of emotional game playing and manipulation that happens in these type of workspaces. So your stress, you'll be to had a heart attack allowing these people to upset you. They don't care about your tears. You sitting at your desk, you crying, you're upset. No, they're in there talking about how weak you are. She was in there crying. You will not find any support among people who behave in this way in the workplace. And this is why when we go back to it all, we talk about your coworkers aren't your friends. Toxic boss, inconsistency. They don't apply the rules across the board. You
Mm-hmm.
can turn in an assignment. They have this standard for your work. Somebody will come right behind you doing the exact same thing, and they'll have an excuse for why that's allowed. This is the type of thing that you're going to run into. So when you identify it, you need to document it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, lawsuits can happen when you are not when you're not fair across the board.
They
That is a
can.
major problem. You
And
cannot, when you get ready to discipline, you can't discipline one for doing something and not do it with everybody. Every time it happens, it needs to be done the same way for everybody. Even if it's the same thing. If you have three or four people late, you can't come down hard on one and then give the other two or three a slap on the wrist. It
that's right.
has to
And
be
that
consistent.
it does. And that's how you will start to identify and document discrimination. Because is this just happening to you? Are these rules just applying to you because you're a minority or you're a woman? Is there a
Hmm.
set of standards that are just for you? And when you find out that a person who has done the thing that you got in trouble for because it was so wrong, you need to
Hmm.
write down who, what, when, where, how. And if you got evidence, you better document it. If you can take pictures of it, do that. Get tangible evidence because at some point, just it's not going to get better, first of all. Unless
Exactly.
unless they remove the leadership, the only time a toxic work environment gets better is if leadership is replaced. If they
Exactly.
don't
There has to
replace
be a major change.
yep. And that's why a lot of companies, when they come and take over, struggling or failing companies, they fire. The first thing they do is fire leadership. Because if leadership was successful, the company wouldn't be going under anyway.
This is true.
JB asked a good question. Do these sisters believe that unions help prevent toxic work environments? No. Unions, for the most part, unless you have one that's impotent, they will help the employee who's dealing with a toxic work environment when it comes to disciplinary action against them. That's the most you're going to get out of them. They're supposed to help negotiate pay, but we see a lot of times, unless it's something like the carpenters union, the electrical union, things like that, they will fight for them to get wage increases. A lot of times, especially I would say with civil service unions, I think you don't see the level of movement that you would in other unionized jobs. I feel like um, some of these unions, when they know they have a consistent number of people or they're just not effective to me. I just find it's just like they just take that for granted. And it could be because the memberships are not high either. Because I think a lot of people don't join unions as much anymore. What do you
Well,
think,
there's a
Jill?
whole nother set of problems that can come along with unions and how unions are done is different all over the country. So I know for here, where I am in the Southeast, unions are not as heavy as if you're in, let's say, Jersey or Pennsylvania, New York, where everybody's a part of a union. It's
Mm-hmm.
just something that you do, and it has to do more so with the industry that you're in, even still. But yeah, no, as far as the management can still be toxic. And really all the union is going to do is when it's time, as far as representation, the union will
Yeah.
be there if you as an employee needs representation.
Yeah.
But
I
yeah,
find that when you get in trouble on a job, if it's not some huge violation that you just can't get around, they can't get around, they're pretty good about helping you get out of unfair treatment.
Yeah.
write-ups in particular and hearings. But if you're caught dead to rights, it's really hard to defend you. That is why we even talked about that when I was talking about what can you, people are like, well, what can you sue for? You unfortunately you cannot sue because you're in a toxic work environment, right? That's
Mm-hmm.
not illegal. Being a piss poor leader, being unethical, being verbally abusive, those are not things you can sue for. The things that you can file litigation for is in a toxic work environment are discrimination cases, harassment
Mm-hmm.
cases. And you're going to need to document to establish that, right? So when you're navigating a toxic work environment, I like right here when we put on here, just to go back a little bit, expect a roller coaster of emotions, anger, sadness, disappointment, and even grief. You're going to experience all that. But I will say something else too, depending on the type of toxic boss that you're dealing with. Because, and I know people are throwing around the term narcissistic all the time, because, yeah, you are going to deal, there are some narcissistic bosses out there. But a lot of people, everybody is not suffering from narcissism. Sometimes people are just assholes, okay? So
Absolutely.
let's talk about how toxic managers speak to you. I don't, whenever you're trying to move on, I don't think you're ready yet. Leaders that hold you back from development. So when they tell you they don't think you're ready yet, they don't help you grow. They will not allow you to take advantage of opportunities within the organization that would allow you to grow. When classes are given, now some jobs, if you sign up for classes, they have to let you receive additional training. But
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you're in the private sector, that may not necessarily happen. They're holding you back because they're worried about you surpassing them.
And when it
You
comes to
know.
growth, they should be able to give you a path to that growth. If
hmm
they're not giving you a path to how do I get there? What do I need to do? Then that's a signal there that there's a problem.
And again, this is if you are in a leadership position. I hope you're looking at these traits, and if you're identifying that you have done some of these things, maybe you can consider how you look. You know, yes, it's Friday, but I need this Monday. Management's poor planning becomes your problem, and
Mm.
that will result in you having high turnover. We'll discuss this at your annual review. Managers who don't give frequent feedback, and really, I have an issue personally with, don't wait until it's
Mm.
time for my performance review to tell me all the issues that you have with me. Because if it was an issue, you had all year before we got to my review to tell me what I was doing incorrect. But
Mm-hmm.
and I've had that happen to me before. You're holding me to an impossible standard that you're not holding these other people to. And
At
not
the
only
end of
do
the
I see,
day,
Mhm.
your review, when you have your annual review, I know for us, we get um, annual reviews and raises, and it should not be a surprise whether you're not getting a raise, you are getting a raise, what the value of your work is, if you're doing well or not. It should not be a surprise that you find these things out during your annual review. As a
It should
matter
not
of
be.
fact, I would venture to say that depending on the size of the company you work for, you should at least have a basic conversation with your local, with your manager at least once a quarter, if not once a month. And I mean, just some, not anything long and drawn out, but definitely just you should have a good feel for what's going on. It makes no sense to go a whole year and not have and assume you're doing a good job, only to find out there's this laundry list of problems. And see, that type of stuff leads me to believe that they're just making up reasons not to give you a raise
Pretty
or not to
much.
give anybody a raise versus no, if there are things that need correcting, let's do that now so we can improve now as I go versus waiting till the end of the year when it's time for raises or whatever. And now you have this laundry list of things you want me to change. I could have changed it already before now, you
Exactly.
know.
People expect feedback, and really, you should have the SOP. When it makes things clear to the employees what their job requirements and standards are, and it's clear to you because when you give your rating, when you review your employee, it's going to be based off their standards of performance. That's something that I should know coming in, what I'm going to be graded
Mm-hmm.
on. And I try to do that with my team. Here's your SOP. So, and here's the service rating form, right? When we do our one-on-ones, we go through the service. If you were to receive your annual review today based on this criteria, it will you would get this, you would fail, you would pass, whatever. And then you can start talking about the issues that you're having with their performance. You're not turning in your reports on time. You're not putting out the whatever output that you have. If you're not doing it consistently, you should be able to know where the markers are and if you're meeting them or not. Everybody deserves to know what their metrics are, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Exactly. And one way I would say how typically I know for us when we give reviews, we do each employee will do a self-evaluation, and that's a
Mhm.
form that they fill out, and that's their opportunity to say, these are the things that I've accomplished, and these are the areas that I would like more training in or
Yeah.
assistance with. This is what I'd like to see happen. I'd like to, see these things implemented in the department. It's kind of their way to formalize giving me feedback on what they see in the department and how things could improve.
And you want to know, and I would even say give your team a rating for you and let them
Oh yeah.
submit it anonymously. Do you feel like you are receiving value? Do you feel like you're supported the way you need to be? And if not, what
Hmm.
would you like to see, right?
Right.
And I think that's just fair. I think everybody should be able to not only know what the metrics are, because everybody has their own management style too. You can have a department where the metrics are all the same, but you have different supervisors, and one supervisor's standard is not going to be the other one's. I don't think that should be the case either. I think everybody should be operating off a basic standard set of rules. Now, how you supervise may be different, but the SOP remains the same. Now, as far as judgment, I'm not going to say that your supervisor is going to rate you the same as another supervisor would, but at least you know where the metrics are and you know how they like for the work to be done. When you present it to them, you understand the way they see it. And that's why the one-on-ones are important, because if I know how you're going to grade me, if I know what you value, then
Hmm.
I'm able to help. I can get there, I'm able to meet your expectations. But if you don't give me anything, how am I supposed to know what to do, you know
I think this is where also when you're having reviews, this is also where the what is it? The your job description comes into play,
Yeah.
because that really should be a guide to whether or not you're doing what it is you should be doing. And once you start moving away from that, then that's when, okay, we need to modify the job description. And with that normally comes some type of a change, rate change. And so, I mean, if you're being judged on things that are not a part of your job description, then I think that that's a problem as well. Because there are
Yeah.
certain things, hey, that's not my responsibility to do that. It's not my responsibility to take out the trash. Why am I getting,
Well,
why am
so
I getting punished for not taking out the trash? you know
because where most employers get you is, yes, you have your SOP, you have your job description,
mm-hmm.
but almost every time it says and other duties as assigned. That is a catch-all.
That is a catch-all. However, those duties should be relatively similar to what you already do. So, for instance, if you've got someone that it's one thing if you're on the janitorial staff and they're talking about things that are in your job description or adjacent to your job description, but shouldn't say, well, you're in the janitorial staff, and they talk about all the janitorial duties, and then they also turn around and say something like, and you need to go wash my car every Friday.
Well, so now
Now
that's
that
a little
starts,
murky because you're talking about something for yourself personally.
well,
But what if I
exactly.
say, but what if I
Hmm.
decide? Because here's the thing, because we can say what should and shouldn't happen, but this is why these environments are toxic, right? because
Right.
I've decided you have bathroom duty. Go clean up the bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't do it, I can write you up for insubordination because your job description literally says and other duties as assigned. Now, if you have an issue with an order that I have given you, you can file a complaint. And so
Now,
this is where a lot of people
if
get in
you're
trouble.
but see, that's if
Mhm.
you're in the janitorial staff. But for instance, if I'm sitting here, I'm in the engineering department, I'm an engineer, and then you're going to say that part of my duties are include cleaning up the bathroom, then no, that's
Where does it
not.
say I can't? So no, this is where I'm saying this
And
is where
I hear what you're saying. You're saying, where does it say I can't say that? I
I
think,
said other. I wrote in there,
yeah.
and I'm not saying don't think I'm defending that type of
Oh, I
behavior
get
because
what you're saying, but
it.
that
But
can be where they
I'm
get
telling the
over on it.
employee
Yeah.
though, you will get written up and terminated for insubordination. Don't think they want that. Like when they start asking you to do bizarre things
Yeah.
outside of your job description, more than likely they're trying to get rid of you.
True.
So that's
True.
the other thing you need to look out for. If you
Yeah.
are ready to plant that flag and be insubordinate, just know you've given them cause because that's really what they're more than likely looking for. But if it's in a
Mm.
right to work state, they don't even have to do all that. If they want to get rid of you, they'll just get rid of you. But if you're in a
True.
situation like a civil service job, for example, other duties as assigned, and they give you an assignment and you say no, you can be written up, suspended, and even terminated. And I
Mm.
think that's the end goal anyway. That's why I'm giving you a messed up assignment because I want you to
Wow.
get so angry that you'll either quit or you'll do something that I can write you up for insubordination on. So the correct way to handle that, like let's say you are a clerk, you're a police officer, whatever you are, they tell you you got bathroom duty. You follow the order if it's not illegal or
Mm-hmm.
unethical. You do the assignment, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
you file the complaint.
Mm-hmm.
Because why am I the only person being asked to clean up the bathroom? Nobody else on this team has been asked to do that. You don't come at anyone else like that. It's me. You're attacking me. So you document it and you file a complaint. So he's rough around the edges, but he's a good performer, but he's a top performer. Managers make excuses for toxic employees. That's another thing about a toxic work environment. Some of the people in that office engage in some of the most egregious behavior. But the only time anybody gets into any trouble or discipline is when it comes to you. I would say you have more of a fighting chance if you do belong to a union or if you are in a civil service job because there's more appeals and processes. They can't just outright fire you without you getting a pre-disciplinary hearing, you know? And
Mm.
even then, there's still
Interesting.
an appeal process. So, and keep in mind, if you are working for a narcissistic boss, you're going to have to deal with the flying monkeys, right? So when they engage in egregious behavior, that boss is going to always defend them. And so when they're in cahoots together, they'll all team up like form up like Voltron and get you out of there.
Mm.
Are you sure you have time for that? Leaders discourage growth opportunities. They do not want to see you grow. They want to see you right there. And that is one of the other reasons why you may need to work on your plan for transitioning because they won't let you be great. Okay. That's our little secret. Ethics and integrity are fuzzy. Again, when you're in a toxic work environment, you really have to think about what are you going to fight for when you file your complaints, when you file your grievances, or if you're going to file litigation. You know, you need to be clear on what direction. You have to make a decision on how far are you willing to take this. Are you willing to
Mm.
go through everything that you have to go through to deal? And a lot of people say the answer is no. That's why a lot of people don't file complaints. They'll just ignore it. They'll let it go. Me, I will say, as a person who's been in a toxic work environment,
Mm-hmm.
one thing that I learned the hard way is not only should you, whether things are going great or not, you should be documenting everything that goes on anyway to keep a little record. When you notice things that are out of the ordinary, you want to bookmark these things because they will come back later. They always do.
Mm.
You know, right now you're not on the menu, but at any given time when you're in a toxic work environment, You can be either that, or
Mm,
you're either going to be a flying monkey, or you're going to be a super ass kisser.
this is
Because
true.
most toxic bosses are not going to let you stay in the middle. They're going to demand that you pick a side. They're going to demand that you pick a team. You're going to have to make some kind of declaration. And that's something else you're going to have to take into account.
Mm.
And if you are a flying monkey, well, that's unfortunate for you. I need you to take the fall on this one. Leaders throw people under the bus. They'll blame everything on you. And not only will they blame everything on you, or expect you to take the blame for it, they'll turn around and put that on your service rating at the end of the year. So this is why I say, more than likely, if you're in a toxic work environment, you're going to fall anyway. So at least fall standing up, fall on your 2 feet, stand for something. Don't compromise your morals, your ethics, your integrity for a, a position or a situation that is only temporary, a time, reason, and season. You know, you embarrassed us in there. Managers give disrespectful feedback. They're talking about your clothes. And look, there is professional attire. There are people who come to work dressed inappropriately and they get sent home. That's different than somebody trying to embarrass you and publicly shame you. And if my outfit is inappropriate or you believe it's inappropriate for work, you don't tell me that in front of everybody. You pull me to the side and we discuss it. Okay. Most toxic leaders, here's another thing to know if you have a toxic leader, they do not want a paper trail. They don't want to put anything
Mm.
in writing. They don't. So whenever your toxic boss comes and gives you an order, you immediately go and you send an email. Per our just to be clear, per our conversation, you are requesting me to do blah 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 blah. Send it off. If they don't respond, give them time to respond. Send it. Reply. I'm still looking for an affirmative. You want to get it in writing what they're asking you to do. And I'll tell you this: what I've come to find when you do that, a lot of times they'll just say never mind. They'll say just drop it, don't worry about it, because they don't want it documented that they're asking. They don't want it documented that they're asking you to do something messed up, or that they're trying to do something to you messed up. They don't want to put it in writing. you know they get mad when you if you're going on sick leave, if you go on vacation. They want to act like you're doing something wrong and taking the time that you have earned. Okay.
This is so very true. It really is so true.
Please run things by me from now on. Bosses punish mistakes rather than teaching. So a micromanager wants to have their hands on and in everything. But you notice they don't do that with the bad employees, right? They're not concerned about their behavior, their performance, but they are acutely focused on you. And why? More than likely, it's because you're standing out. You're a better leader than they are. They notice that when people have questions, they come to you instead of them. Everybody likes you. That is a competition to a toxic boss. They don't like that, and they don't want to see you building relationships. I've heard stories of people in departments having meetings and organizations where the supervisor or the director or CEO comes in and yells at them for collaborating, accuses them of collaborating and colluding behind their back because they saw them at a table talking. Like, what are you guys doing over there talking? What are you over there talking about? It's just purely innocent. We're strategically planning how to make this work. But
Hmm.
why? Well, if that's going on, well, why wasn't I invited? A micromanaging boss is very insecure. And the reason why they micromanage is because, first of all, especially if they got their job by getting someone else fired or brown nosing, they're always looking for the possibility of you
Somebody
replacing.
might do that. Yeah. Somebody doing it to them.
Hmm. Very paranoid, or that you kiss ass better.
Yeah.
because you got to think about the kind of boss that being a brown noser works for. Like you really got to think about the type of personality that wants somebody running up behind them. Like that would drive
Hmm.
me crazy if somebody was kissing my butt. I would be like, get some dignity. You
I
know,
know.
it's not something that would appeal to me.
Yeah, me neither. And I have had that happen when someone was trying to, when I've had several people when they're trying to gain some level of favor, and it's
Hmm.
not a comfortable feeling at all. It's weird. It's really, really weird, because it's like, what in the, they're always giving you compliments. I've had a situation, I've had people that are no longer with the company, and there's someone now that's currently at the company always giving compliments and saying things that were almost on the verge of cringe. And it was like, what? Why is he saying that? I don't. That's really weird. And it's not anything that's even. I'm not asking for it. I'm not. Just like, hmm. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. I can't help but wonder if they think, do you not realize that I know what you're doing?
Yeah,
And that makes me watch you even more.
and like the kind of person that is okay with that is like,
Yeah.
for me, it looks like a person that has a or a king complex. They're like person who wants to be worshipped, right? They want to have subjects. Not they don't want to have co-workers. They want to have loyal subjects, and they want
Hmm.
you to bow and scrape and kiss their fanny. And
Yep.
you just got to think about it. And this is what I was thinking about too. Do I really want to be around these people? If you are the only reason why you're here with these people is because you all applied at this company and you all got hired. These are not people you have handpicked or chosen because you met them somewhere and you genuinely like them and want to get along with them. And this is why I go back to your coworkers are not your friends, because once lines start getting drawn, people are start to ask are being start asked to write statements. People are being asked to come to HR. When things really start going on, you get to see just how much of a family, like they like to call it, this my at work family. You'll get to see how much of a family they really are. They'll get little on you in a minute.
Really
They don't want to
quick.
have, they didn't see anything. Something that you all, one of the biggest betrayals is to have a conversation about some egregious behavior that you and another coworker have witnessed. And for them, when it comes time to talk to HR or to go to court, they didn't see or hear anything.
I don't know, and I don't know anything. I
I,
wasn't
I,
there,
I
and
didn't see it. I turned my head. You know what? I don't know if that happened or not. I didn't see it.
hmm.
So, of course,
Yep.
I'll be on email over vacation. Managers neither promote nor model balance. So I have had a boss like that even when they're supposed to be off, they're on because they're such a micromanager that they have to watch you. They can't afford because a
Mm.
lot of times these people have been engaged in such poor behavior themselves. They're afraid to go on vacation and to leave the workplace behind because they're worried who can be colluding while they're gone. What could be going on while I'm gone? You know,
Secrets.
and they'll say things to you like, you know what, I'm having trust issues here. I'm feeling like I can't trust. Don't fall for that because they will do. I've had that done to me. I just don't know if I feel like I can't trust you. Or they won't say you most of the time. I'm having a trust issue here. But what they're saying to you is basically, I don't trust you. And if you
Wow.
are, and you don't suffer from a moral dilemma, you know the difference between right and wrong. There may be a time where you just stand there, you just look at them. Okay, it's unfortunate that you feel that way. Don't apologize because it's not your fault. Don't let people make their issue yours. I'm not going to apologize to you because you're trying to manipulate me into feeling some kind of way because you are doing things that you have no business doing. Of course, you don't feel like you could trust me because you know you're out of line. So,
Wow.
mm-mm. They moved the goalposts. I literally had a review where they put something negative in the review, and then I said, "Well, can you tell me what makes you say that?" They give me the example of what happened that led them to this conclusion. When I respond and say why that is a bad example because the reason why this situation happened, they immediately shifted to, well, here's another situation. Nah, you can't just make up. Now, we just talked about your reason. Like, now you're just throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks. That's what they'll do. Like, literally, you just said this was the reason you put that there. And now that I've debunked it, here now you're making up something else. And now watch me dismantle that too. Because
Mm,
most of the time it's bullshit.
that
And
is so terrible.
and like being in a toxic work environment, I just had to decide what 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 am I willing to fight for? What am I fighting for?
Yeah.
Um, I want to protect my reputation. I'm not going to allow anybody to mistreat me. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not fighting to get along because if I could wave a wand and everybody here just suddenly like me today, are these people who I would even want to hang out and be around? Absolutely not. So I do think when you're in a toxic work environment, the isolation that often occurs because you're going to be set apart. If you do have any type of moral code, you're going to be set apart. You're going to have to be okay with that.
Very,
Okay.
very true.
You are going to, and you should be okay with that because, again, I'm going to go back to if you met these people outside of work, you would not even be talking to them. And I think online it shows up like that too. You go into some of these clubhouse rooms, you come on you on your own programs and you have a live chat, you hand out the link, and you be in these rooms and they turn pretty big, and next everybody in there is just kung fu fighting. Everybody kung fu fighting. Nobody's listening to anybody speak, and
You
it's
know,
like, mhm.
that makes me think. I wonder if that's the only reason they're in there. Because at the end of the day, when they talk about these same topics over and over again, are those the only things that they actually have in common? And outside of that, there's nothing else.
I do
So they
think
just
that's
keep
part of
talking.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, and I think a lot of people go on there. They're just trying to gain notoriety or recognition, trying to build
Mm,
their reputation in the space, and I
yeah.
get that too. But if you have to do it attacking people, it doesn't serve you because one thing about that is, what it says, the power of the tongue. It's a blade. It'll cut you. It cuts both ways, and
Hmm.
so. And I think you were talking about, I'm not even going to name the content creator, but them over on Clubhouse carrying on, and you see everybody dogpiling them,
Yep.
but certain people, they like that because it feeds into their program. But if you're a person who's genuinely interested in having real conversations, you're a lot of times you're not going to find that in those spaces. You're going to have to curate your own space. You're going to have to cultivate your own working environments because people are different. And I think you just really have to, people say all the time, and it gets to the point where it's a cliche, but you really do have to find your tribe. You have to find people who are like-minded, and it's like that at work too. You're going to have to find your niche at work. If you have decided, I'm not leaving until I'm ready, well, you're going to have to decide what is that going to look like for you. You're going to have to really think about, well, how am I going to navigate this space, right? What am I going to do to keep me safe and to be comfortable at work? How can you get your work done in peace? And a lot of times that's just going to mean just staying out the way. And staying out of the way can have its own consequences too. Because if you're in a right to work state, people will fire you just because you don't participate and come to events, right? You
That
don't.
is very true.
Mhm.
That is very true because you will find that on, I've known people to have that on their reviews. there'll be comments about them not participating. And I used to think that is so odd. I never would have thought of that as a comment. When people start saying, "Yeah, they don't ever bring anything to the picnic," and I'm thinking, to the what? They don't come to the picnic, or they don't when everybody else is bringing something to the whatever potluck they have. This person didn't
Mhm.
bring something, and it's like, why is that something to comment? That is not a part of their job description. Why would they? I mean, why is
Uh,
that even a conversation? I don't even understand that. But I have definitely heard that happen. And I mean, I think I can think of there are two people that come to my mind right off the bat where I know that they had that, there was that conversation, that thing was said about them. And I just thought, that is ridiculous. But
There
it
are
is what it is.
employers that have that on their service reviews, your
Yeah.
interpersonal skills. Do you
Yep.
participate? And so, for those of us like me, being a Torah keeper, I'm not going to participate in any holiday stuff, right?
No.
So, to circumvent being accused of not contributing, I do things like I'll bring donuts on a Wednesday, or I will suggest, hey, let's have a food day, a potluck or something, just something random throughout the non-holiday period. So because especially if I know Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, any of those holidays are going to roll around, my unwillingness to participate can cause an issue for some people. But however,
Mm.
if I'm giving and doing throughout the year, it mitigates a lot of that. So I don't have to worry about being accused of being antisocial. So
Mm.
there are different things you have to do to navigate around some of that. And Wednesday's donut day. People love donuts, so just sometimes it may be just picking up a couple of dozen donuts and put them in the office to and making sure everybody know you bought them. That can kind of help you get out of some of the holiday stuff if you're a person who does not want to participate. You can
That's
get out of
true.
that kind of stuff by doing things during the year. You know, they don't want to discuss ideas. They take your ideas, they dismiss your ideas. If you said it, they don't want anything to do with it, only to come back later and present your idea as if it's their own. That's something else that happens in the toxic work environment. In the toxic and you are always accused of being the problem. Stop being They'll say things to you like you see here, stop being unreasonable. um why are you so Stop being sensitive. You don't get to tell me how I'm going to receive something that you are saying or doing
Mm.
to me. Okay. And I think that happens a lot, not just at work, but I think it just happens when you're communicating with people a lot of times. They're like, oh, God, I was just playing with you. Stop being so sensitive. No,
Yeah.
stop being a jerk.
Yeah.
You know, when you don't get to say whatever you want to people and then tell them how they're supposed to process or accept it. It's just like if you give someone a gift, like if I bring you a sandwich and you throw it in a trash can, okay, first of all, I'm never going to bring you another sandwich, but I can't, I'm not going to, hey, I gave it to you. I don't get to choose what you do with it. The polite thing would have been that even if somebody gives me something and I know it's not going to be
Hello.
seeking legal counsel for harassment or discrimination, and understanding the implications of at will employment. So, again, you need to see if you're in an at will state. And if you are, that means they can fire you without cause. Okay. Civil servant roles emphasize protections available like whistleblower policies, union support, formal complaint procedures, and hostile work environment. So a lot of times when you are a union, The unions tend to already set up rules for how you can file complaints and grievances and things like that. So you want to find out what your process is. One of the things that we talked about in our previous slide was how not knowing the rules can hurt you. So I can say I was put in that position. I didn't know the rules. I did not know how to play the game. And so I filed some things, but if I knew what I know now, hindsight being 2020, I would have handled my house to work environment situation a lot different, and I would have documented a lot sooner. You know, now I'm at a point where if I ever got in this situation again, I will know what to do. And I also know what to ignore, because there are certain things, and this is where I think it's a slippery slope, Zale, for some people, because they're thinking, oh, this is not a big deal. I'm not going to,
Mm.
when I say ignore, ignoring doesn't mean I'm not documenting. It means I've decided, because if you're talking about a narcissist, for example, you giving them an emotional reaction, going in there trying to have a conversation, attempting to straighten it out, that feeds the narcissist. They enjoy you being all wound up.
Mm.
Their whole goal is to goad you. So be self-aware, practice boundaries, recognize toxic work environment signs early, and set boundaries. Set boundaries on what you will and will not accept, because you do, as a person, have a free thinking human being. You have a right to not participate in bullshit.
Hmm. Now,
Okay.
one thing I wanted to comment on when you said to doc when we're talking about documenting,
Hmm.
document, because if you have a manager that's even halfway doing what they should be doing, they are documenting these things. And so whether they tell you or not, the I document when I have incidences with my guys, even if it's just a basic conversation about certain things, I document that. And there's a way to do that. You have to document in such a way that it can be saved and that date is saved.
Yep.
So
That's
just
why
so just understand that. And I mean,
get you an
and I've,
external drive.
mm-hmm, yep. It has to be
Because,
saved so that that date can be saved so that it will not be left on your computer. So you won't
yep.
lose it on your computer if for some reason you end up leaving. So, and that's one thing, and maybe at some point in the future we can discuss just the idea of what it means to document. But yeah, basically having a USB drive that you can save things on, save those documents, and I mean save those notes on, and each one should be saved separately in its own file so that the date on it when it was created will be, so each incident will be when you make the comment, each incident will be saved on that particular date. And then they can't say, oh well, you wrote all these down at the same time and you just made all this stuff up. Nope, this is the date it was created, or if it's a Word document or PDF or whatever text file, nope, each one was created on the same date, and I have evidence of it right here. And so they can't
Yeah.
come back and say, well, you just made all this up at one time and typed it up at one time or whatever. You have all of it on a USB drive, and you can go back and you'll have it to reference. So it won't be on a computer that you can't access.
Emails, any emails that you
Yep.
have that are unprofessional exchanges, or things that are them playing gotcha games with you, download them and put them on your drive or on your cloud. Whether you have an external cloud that you're going to use, or if you're going to use a USB, but you're going to have to remember to take these things with you every day. So you may need to put that USB on your keychain and have it linked into the computer, so you know you're not leaving there without it, because you can't get in the car without your keys. But you need to make sure you have that thumb drive with you, because guess what? You may show up one day and your key card doesn't work and you can't get in the building. Guess what? You can't get that thumb drive, because they may just decide to pack your office up for you, and that they're not, and decide that they're not letting you back in. So there's that. You'll come and you'll find that you're locked out of your computer. You can't access your emails. You can't access your drive. So all the evidence that you have on there that you need to support what you're saying, you can't get it. They're not going to let you back in there so you can get them. Because keep in mind, even though one of the things, listen, when I talk about finding allies and utilize HR or external resources, the utilizing HR part, I would say you absolutely will file the complaints with HR because that's part of the process. However, what you're not going to do is go in there assuming that they are going to help you. Human resources is not your friend. They are there to protect the interests of the organization or entity that you belong to.
Absolutely.
So you keep that in mind and just know when you go make these complaints, be prepared to be put on trial right then and there. They'll be asking, you'll be asked questioned and made to suddenly believe you're doing something wrong. So you're going to have to deal with that. So we talk about number 4, self-care, maintaining your well-being through stress management and seeking professional help if needed. If you need to go talk to somebody, do that. And that can be part of your complaint as well too, because I would even suggest that if you are in a hostile work environment, that you do go seek counseling, because that's another part of your testimony, because it's being documented that you've been telling the same story from the beginning. You've even told your therapist. Okay.
Hmm.
And number 5, again, exit strategy. Have a plan for career progression and know when it's time to move on. Know when to phone. Because at some point, just like I said with that job I was on for 20 years, I finally had to admit it was time to fold them. Like, this is not going to get better. I had to wake up and get the heck out of Dodge, you know? So we could talk about exit strategy. I think the next time we'll come back, we'll talk about documenting and your exit strategy, because once you understand you're in a toxic work environment, you need to just, we can just get this out the way now. You need to decide what you're going to do. You understand your environment, you recognize the signs of toxicity, poor communication, high turnover, culture of disrespect, setting intentions. Be clear about your personal goals and limits. Know your status and geography. Where you are emotionally, physically, and in your career journey. Where are you going? What's the end game? Mapping a plan. Have a strategy for progression or exit. Consider your rights, protections, especially in at will versus civil service positions. Let me tell you something. If you are in a leadership role, I do like how, we're doing the John Maxwell books right now. You should have a plan, a leadership plan. And not only should you as a leader have a leadership plan, you as an employee, as a regular person, you should have a plan for what direction you're going to go, because the hardest person to lead is yourself. And so sometimes you just have to set up a chart, write it down, map it out, and make yourself physically do it. Because I think when you do it physically, it's easier for you to manifest it and see it in your mind. And once you can chart your journey, it's just like planning a trip. You have all the directions, you're writing it out, you're writing out your plan for the move. Navigating toxicity. Employ tools like setting boundaries, documenting issues, and knowing when to escalate or exit. You got to know when to fold them, but you also need to know when to escalate. Legal protections. Know the difference between one-party consent, two-party consent states for recording conversations, because I know a lot of people were talking about secret recording. Find out if you're in a state that allows that, because if you're in a one-party state, you don't have to get anybody's permission, because you're giving consent. You can record that, but keep in mind, and a lot of times, some court, they will not allow secret recordings to be used outside of establishing character, because the person didn't know they were being recorded. But the fact that you can use it to establish character is a big deal. So just know the difference, because if you're in a two-party state, you may not be able to use the recording at all. And safety first. If there's harassment or violence, prioritize your safety. And this may mean exiting immediately. You may have to just take your savings and get up out of there. So I think we're already an hour in. And so I just wanted to wrap that up, because I know that had been hanging for a while and we didn't get to talk about toxic bosses and what you're going to be looking
Mm,
for and looking at. But for me, my overall goal is for you, the emerging leader, the person who is a leader and has been a leader for years, to think about how you're showing up. How are you showing up? What drives you? Do you have a plan? Do you know what you're doing? Or are you literally, and I think sometimes we literally do this, Zell. We just go from experience to experience. Oh, I got an opportunity. You're just letting life happen to you. I have done,
mhm.
and I just, it does not serve me. And so it's like, I
And we
think,
have to be careful. And
mm-hmm,
I think we have to be careful, especially if, like, for instance, in my situation where you're kind of like middle management. So
mm-hmm,
I have those that report to me, but I also report to somebody else. And
right.
so I'm thinking about, when I'm talking to my boss, and when I'm thinking about as far as whoever, the person that manages me, and what I need to keep a note of and keep these things in mind when I'm talking to my boss. But at the same time, I have others that report to me, and I'm thinking about how I am towards them, and so it's kind of interesting to be in the middle and see these things somewhat from both sides about what I need to be careful of as far as how I treat other people, but at the same time, paying attention how, how I move when it comes to my boss.
Yeah, I can say looking at these documents and coming up with these things and doing the research on it, I've learned a lot, and a lot of it the hard way. But a lot of these tools that we come like, especially with the 21 irrefutable qualities of a leader, the 21 indispensable qualities of a leader, I'm learning a lot about myself and my leadership style. And that's why I like that chart, how toxic managers speak, because reading that, just seeing that,
Mm,
you'll know, are you engaged in any of these behaviors? And if you are, you'll stop saying this and you'll stop, not my problem, figure it out. We've always done it that way. You just don't
true.
communicate well, you know.
Yeah, it can be challenging. I will say that it can be challenging to try to be patient when someone asks you the same question over and over, when you're constantly, helping some. I mean, you have
Mhm.
to, I have definitely learned, my patience has definitely been tried. I'll say that much. Because it just seems like, it's never ending. The questions never end.
And I'm learning, what I've come to find is, especially since I've been promoted, I'm learning that a lot of times the asking of the questions aren't so much about the work, right? It's really
Mm-hmm.
about testing boundaries. They want to see if this is something that
Mm-hmm.
they can push you into not making them do. They don't want to do it
Yeah.
anymore. And that's really a lot of times what it's being brought up for. Like, well, do we still have to sign do we still need to
Yeah.
put that in? Yeah, you still
I
need to
get
do
the
it.
testing boundaries. I also get where they just don't want to be responsible. They want to point back and say, well, she told me to do it this
Hmm.
way, instead of that's a decision they don't want to make for themselves. Just stuff like that. So I'm like, okay.
And that's something that the people pleasing boss does. That's why I say I think the people pleaser boss gets away with a lot of stuff because they're non-confrontational. They don't want to tell anybody to do anything. They don't want to be the bad guy. They want to be liked. So they will
Yep.
always say yes when they should be saying no. They will do, a person who's not performing well, they will do their work for them. I've seen
Yep.
that. It's crazy. It's like, why are you going, like, why are you being Buzz Lightyear and going to infinity and beyond for somebody who doesn't deserve it? And that's one thing that I really wanted to focus in on for myself, and for other people to just think about. Stop being a Buzz Lightyear for people who and things that don't deserve it. You know, you're
Agreed.
going to
Oh yeah.
infinity and beyond. You are Anita Baker.
Mm-hmm.
You are giving them the best that you got, and they're not giving you anything in return. You know,
Mm-hmm. Oh
you got
yeah.
to set limits. You got to set boundaries. And if you are a person who doesn't want to write anybody up, you don't want to chat, then you need to get out of the way and let somebody, a stronger leader, get in the place who will. Because if you want, somebody else will. But
Absolutely.
But I know people don't want to lose the pay. You want to keep the money and stuff, but you are failing everybody in this organization with your
Mhm.
unwillingness, with your noodle back and unwillingness to do what needs to be done. Guess what? Sometimes you got to write people up. That comes with being in leadership. Just like at home, sometimes you have to discipline your children. Just like you have to correct, you don't have a problem with correcting your spouse, your children. When you go to work, these people, you are responsible for their performance and what happens in that workplace. That is your responsibility, just like your
Mhm.
family is your responsibility. You have taken on that role and decided that you wanted to be it, right? So then you need
Yep.
to live up to it. You owe it to your team to do your damn job. You should be mitigating high turnover. And so if you're that person and you're sitting up and you're doing other people's work because you want to keep the peace, you're a housekeeping manager, a supervisor, and such didn't clean their rooms properly, but you go up there and you go ahead and do it for them. You're not helping them and you're not helping yourself because first of all, you're not even doing your job, you're doing their job. You're
Mhm.
sending the wrong message to your team right there. When you do their work for them, you're sending the wrong message. And you're also establishing a different pecking order. It's that you're allowing them to top you from the bottom.
Exactly.
So that's just something to think about. And if you're doing that with your children, are your children topping you from the bottom? You're weak. You can't make a decision. You can't punish anybody. You can't say no. Your kids just running all over you. Your spouse talk crazy to you, disrespectfully. You just let I can't, you can't say, you can't even demand respect for yourself. You won't do anything for yourself. And listen, a person who won't even protect and look out for themselves, how can you expect them to show up and be a real leader and fight for you? So this is a whole 360 perspective because not only does it start with the employee in leading themselves into doing what they're supposed to do, it goes all the way around. And I would say bad leadership shows up everywhere you go. If you're a bad leader, you're a bad leader at work, you're a bad leader at home, you're a bad leader at play. And it'll just show up everywhere you go. If you have a bad attitude, I always hear that resting bitch face argument where they're like, well, I should be able to look any way I want. You can. You absolutely can hold your face any way you want to. But don't be surprised when you get passed over. Because most people don't want to deal with that. And if you have that attitude and you are in a stank person as a leader, you're going to have high turnover. You will not be able to retain employees because, again, no healthy person wants to deal with that bullshit. So now we'll be able to pick that up from here. You guys, I hope we're going to get ready to close this down. I'm glad we went up through that. Join us on the Hebrew Woman show on the next Sabbath. The shows are already there. If you were watching this Sabbath, you saw me accidentally stream over here. Go ahead and join us on the Hebrew Woman show. Get the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. We are on leadership quality number 2, the law of influence. And you're going to pay attention all week to how the law of influence. And I still say you're going to do the law of the lid as well for number 1. Pay attention to how the law of the lid and the law of influence show up in your week today. And let's be ready to talk about it next Sabbath. If you need the worksheets, if you're going to follow us along and the journal prompts, you can email me at sister7@gmail.com. I'm going to throw that up on the screen. That's sistah7@gmail.com. Zell, you got any final words for us before we get out of here?
Nope, I think that's it.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye bye.
Shalom.